What's up, everyone? This is your boy Julian, and I am here with Raul De Benedittis. He is he's a lot of things. He's from Italy originally. He went to school in the U.S., studied, to my knowledge, industrial tech. Um, was a wide receiver in college. Was scouted by the New York Jets, and now he's taking his career in another direction where he's the CEO of multiple companies throughout his career, and now the head of Nuvola, which is a project I'm very passionate about. And I'm excited to have him here. So, Raul, thank you for being here. How are you doing today?
Julian, thank you for having me. I could tell you did your homework on me, which is impressive. Most people did not know some of the things you mentioned, but I'm good, working hard. We got a lot that we're planning on delivering and in development, and I'm excited to talk about it today.
Okay, awesome. So, you're head of Nuvola, a very new project. Just had a recent token launch, building the community. For people who just don't know about Nuvola, how would you describe Nuvola Digital and what you guys do?
Yeah, so Nuvola, we're in what's called the DePIN sector of the industry. DePIN stands for Decentralized Physical Infrastructure Networks. The
Hmm.
best example that I've always been able to kind of help people understand it easily is Amazon, Google, Microsoft, all these big companies. They're essentially what's called a centralized physical infrastructure, where they provide a service. In this case, I'll use cloud storage and computing. They provide a service and they're centralized, so they own all the operations, all the infrastructure. Believe it or not, they are also own the privacy, so they could see what's being uploaded and whatnot. Oftentimes, they do sell to third party all your data. Decentralized physical infrastructure allows end users to contribute to the network or to the system. What do I mean by that? Julian, you can go spin up nodes and servers and contribute to companies such as Iagon's storage size, right? Where you
Hmm.
can contribute 100 terabytes of storage. And in DePIN, these models allow for revenue sharing. So whoever's contributing to the hardware and the network will receive a percentage of revenue share in proportion to the size of their operations. Here at Nuvola, what we do is we aggregate the DPIN models. So we partnered with Iagon, Minutes Network, OrgFax, Copy. We run operations and nodes on their behalf. We contribute to their networks. And the revenue models that we get from those operations, we revenue share those back to our NVL holders. Now, as decentralized as a lot of DPIN models are, their revenue share model is very exclusive to only node operators. Uh, Rightfully so, they're the ones contributing, so they're going to be earning from those models. Now, they don't have any barriers onto who can contribute, so this opens the door to guys like me and you and anyone else that wants to contribute. And essentially, we revenue share models that are exclusive to node operations in general.
Okay, awesome. So just kind of going into the deep end side of things. So, we have, let's go into the cloud storage or computing. Basically, you're able to bring a bunch of people together. You have a computer, I have a computer, and we have extra, capacity within that computer. And it's about, in a deep end, we could use that capacity so other people can use it. Very much similar to how, an Airbnb runs their business model with homes, where, the platform, if it was decentralized, would be the decentralized infrastructure. And then other people are able to bring their homes into this network so they can leverage them and make money off of them. Is that somewhat similar to what you guys are doing, or not?
Yeah,
What overall DPIN in general?
correct. So DPIN essentially is the best way to describe it is they're sharing economies. Airbnb's is the perfect example that started to introduce the sharing economy in the Web2 space, where essentially, if you own real estate, you can rent it out to any travelers, and Airbnb takes a fee by allowing you to register your property on their platform. or essentially their marketplace. So your real estate property is acting, in this case, on behalf of like a node that contributes to the overall network. Amazon, in a way, what they did with e-commerce, they started doing the same thing where they allowed an end user to tap into their platform and sell or exchange products via their platform. Then they take a fee, and then obviously the business model is built as such. DePIN is taking it a step further, where they are allowing complete control of the network in the end user, where they simply have a software in place and anyone can attach to themselves to the network and expand it, or rightfully so walk away from it at any given moment in time. The revenue share models are much more lucrative in DePIN because, unlike Amazon and these other centralized entities, essentially the DePIN companies are not taking on much of any overhead. All the overhead is taken on by the end user that's providing the node and the infrastructure, essentially. So the revenue share models end up being more like 80, 90, 95% back to the node operators themselves.
Wow.
That's essentially how DePIN functions. It gives much more freedom. Also, decentralization is huge, right? There's not one single point of failure in any of these DePIN models. Amazon goes down, believe it or not. I don't know. I think it's a high percent. Over half of the world's e-commerce space is getting shot down, right? Which is massive. In decentralized settings, because there are so many endpoints contributing, even if Nuvola went down, right, Iagon wouldn't suffer much because there's so many other users that are contributing, right? Same with Minutes and any of our other partnerships. A lot of these models are expansive, meaning that they're not limited to any amount of size or growth because they allow the end users to plug and play, essentially. So that's where DePIN essentially is going to be, in my opinion, the next big wave like we saw with e-commerce in the early 90s.
Yeah, I agree. And I'm so excited to have you here because the point of, Clout Finder Talks is to have conversations with creatives and media, tech, and entrepreneurship. And so I haven't had a chance to have too many of the creatives from a tech and entrepreneurship wave come in to kind of like dive into the nitty-gritty of some of these things. So before we get into Nuvola itself, what are like some areas where we could apply DePIN's networks and and take over like power grids, or like what are some of the different areas where a DePIN network can show itself in regular society?
So it's a great question. Actually, one of the first times I've been asked. Our current partnerships kind of display the different industries. So our first partnership was with Iagon. They're in cloud storage and computing. Every device on the face of the planet needs cloud storage, and they need computing resources and power, correct? Then we're also partnered with Minutes Network. They're in the telecom industry where they are decentralizing the process of how calls are connected and terminated between callers and carriers. It's super innovative. I didn't even realize that, the entire process of connecting a phone call that happens within milliseconds, but there's about 5 different hands or middlemen that the call is exchanged through from the second it's initiated to the second it's terminated. And it's a very expensive process for the carriers on both sides, right? DePIN is again infiltrating that, and they're lowering the cost. They're decentralizing the whole network, and they're allowing people to essentially make phone calls as if they didn't even know who's connecting still, but it's making the system more robust. Another industry is gaming, decentralized gaming, having more ownership of in-game items, being able to monetize and resell like skins, helmets in specific games, right? And the nodes that run all these things are decentralizing the game on a global scale. We're partnered with Kopi, where let's say that they have certain game lag in like South America, for example, they need more server presence for their file nodes. We can establish our operations there and help increase the quality of the gaming within that certain region. You mentioned power grids. I don't know if this is a thing, but if someone can create a decentralized grid system where people can essentially, I'm spitballing here, right? But plug and play power generators into the grid, So there is not one single point of failure where there's one huge generating source that's powering the whole grid. Instead, it's 15,000 different smaller generators all powering in, where if one specific section goes down, the whole grid essentially is still up and running. And again, I don't know fully how those systems work, if there is something in place already like that. But if I was to think of how DePIN can infiltrate another industry, that would be it, right?
Absolutely.
Essentially, take any centralized model that exists within any industry. It can almost be fractionalized and broken down into having more endpoints attached to contribute versus one or two large entities contributing all the resource or power within that. That's how DePIN essentially steps in. You take a big system and you break it down into 1,000, a million, 10 million pieces, and you allow end users to utilize and contribute from those ends. That's how you decentralize the system and the network, which, in my opinion, is way more robust, right? It can't be taken down. We're built on Cardano. You look at the Cardano staking pool and the node system, it has the longest runtime of any crypto in existence. It has never been down ever. We just had a DDoS attack, right, where they tried to, but all they did was they slowed us down for like 3 hours. And the hacker, or the attacker, ended up losing a shit ton of money anyway because of how our developers were able to combat it. That's decentralization in a way. It's DePIN, right, where Cardano's ran by a bunch of nodes from end users that are rewarded for contributing to the network. So in a way, Cardano is its own DePIN model where anyone can spin up a stake pool and nodes and add to the decentralization and how the transactions are handled within it. So yeah, DePIN, it could be applied anywhere essentially, as long as it's a centralized model. You could divide it 1,000 different ways and then let people contribute at their own free will, right? That's essentially what
100%.
DePIN does.
And I think it's so important because the way I look at DePIN is these are potentially freedom networks because we're so early, so obviously scaling models like this will be challenging. But as time goes on, say a government falls, right? And everything that powers that society runs through that government. Well, if we have if we have DePIN networks around energy source, if we have DePIN networks around internet, telecommunications, all these different things, then you have something you can connect to in the future where you're not reliant on governments, you're not reliant on major corporations to function to ensure your survival. Like if a power grid goes out here, I'm in Kentucky right now, I live in DC, a lot of us are going to be in a pretty bad situation and we wouldn't know what to do. But the fact that you can have decentralization around running these type of networks where people can come together and use what they have, and it's freedom in a whole new way that I haven't even contemplated before in my life until I came across this type of infrastructure. I mean, what do you think about that?
I actually took a note when you said power grid DePINs. I'm going to go study how power grids are set up in general now and try to find the problems, right? I spoke about this on the Dad's Gone Crypto interview. They asked me, a question of what's something that stuck with you from my engineering days. And we're here because of problems. If problems don't exist, there's no innovation. Humanity isn't moving forward, right? At the core, humans do one thing: we solve problems, and it comes in the form of innovation. When a problem is solved, something innovative comes into light, right? And I'm now, you just planted a seed in my head about how do power grids work. You hear about power outages all the time, right? And how people are affected. And if I had to guess, it's because there's one or two centralized entities that provides
100%.
power and resources to a large area. And when those go down, everyone is SOL, right? So maybe Nuvola can step in and see if there's already an established DePIN power for the power grid sector, or maybe we can kind of investigate and formalize our own things there. But I think that the world is headed this way, right? These corporations, these big entities that have been around for the last 30, 40 years, they become so large and so centralized that now that these DePIN models are stepping in, these sharing economies are becoming more and more popular. If they don't evolve, they'll become extinct, right? And you see this oftentimes with many larger companies and industries in general, right? Airbnb is killing the real estate game. They don't own a single real estate on any of their network. It's all end user owned, but they're just monetizing a software that helps them tap in. I'm sure Amazon will adapt to some capacity, and so will Apple and these other large conglomerates. But you can apply DePIN anywhere. And like I said, thank you for the power grid idea, because I think I'm gonna go do some research right after this. That might be something. We just had a power outage here in Florida. We had a storm a few weeks ago, and it flicked on and off for about 10 minutes. But it was like, how did this happen? Why does it happen? And it's things that, as normal users of everyday appliances and things, we normally don't think about it, right? But when you really start
100%.
to peel back the layers of how things connect and function, it's like, wait a minute, this system is very centralized, single point of failure. And now that I'm in a position with Nuvola to, innovate and solve a lot of these problems and help our partners, I think it's rightfully so that I start to look into power grids too.
Absolutely. Who knows? Maybe one day you're saving humanity.
Yeah, right.
But I would say this. I think with the adaptability piece is a must, because I mean, what's the quote? It's not the strongest, smartest, or fastest that survive. It's the most adaptable.
Yep.
And another example of a company that wasn't able to adapt to changes within its technology that impacted its industry was Blockbuster. Back in the day, Netflix, Blockbuster could have, I think, buy them for like 50 to 100 grand or something crazy. And the next thing you know, they're replacing Blockbuster completely. And so adaptability is going to definitely be a huge thing for any industry that deals with infrastructure around DePIN. And yeah, I think there's, Minutes Network is a perfect example of, one of your partners. They're going to massively impact, the telecommunications company, industry in the long term, because if you're able to help people take their minutes and, monetize those
Yep.
and do things so much more cheaply, then I mean, that's a lot of profit being saved, and people like lower telephone bills.
Yeah. I think also another thing that DePIN highlights outside of the tech is it goes to expose and show how greedy the current systems are. And
Absolutely.
there's plenty to go around everywhere, right? But these companies just keep absorbing more and more and more. And then someone kind of sat back and said, well, this could be so much better ran, and how do I operate in a way that everyone else can eat, right? Because the wealth gap is insane at the current moment. Even the corporate wealth gap between startups and the real companies, it's like astronomical. So the DePIN is a revolution where you're seeing a financial shift and even an operational shift of these companies being so controlling and possessive about the finances and the operations, and these new ones are arising and saying, hey, I can do what you do 10 times better, 10 times safer, more secure, and 10 times cheaper, and I can share the wealth with everyone. That's going to gain massive momentum. What you're seeing with World Mobile, Minutes, Iagon, these new like revenue sharing models, is they're growing way faster than the initial companies that we're seeing now, how they grew in the previous years when they were coming up. And they're doing that because they're involving so many more end users, right? Like you said, minutes, people are monetizing minutes now. How crazy is that? Who would have ever thought that just having a cell phone, you can monetize just having unused minutes, you get paid for those, right? And this innovation is spreading like wildfire right now, to the point that whoever doesn't get on board and adapts, like you mentioned with your quote, is going to get left in the dust. Blockbuster, I remember going to Blockbuster being super excited, but
Same.
it became annoying every time that I was late on returning something and I got slapped with fees. If I didn't return it, I had to pay the full price on it, right? Netflix comes along and says, well, I hate going to Blockbuster or to the store to buy a movie or rent it. Why don't I create a service where someone could do it from the comfort of their home? And essentially, that's what DePIN has turned into. All these models people can do from anywhere in the world. They're not confined to having to go somewhere or be someplace, right? So what we're seeing is like truly remarkable, in my opinion. I'm happy to be leading Nuvola and our community into this industry because we're at the cutting edge, right? We're partnering with people that are creating things that haven't been created yet. And every day I wake up and it's like, man, what the hell am I going to do today to help push us forward? And whom, I never know who I'm going to have a conversation with. So it's truly remarkable what we're experiencing here.
100%. And so, how did Nuvola even position themselves the way that you guys have? You're helping these companies run their back end node operations. And I mean, obviously, like you said, you're a piece of that. And these are decentralized networks. So anyone who I guess meets the qualifications of these DePINs can do the same. But you guys are like coming in with some horsepower. Do you just have like supercomputers just all around the world that can run nodes, or like how did Nuvola become a thing?
So backtrack to how essentially like Nuvola came to be. I was an early investor in Iagon back in I think January, February 2023. Right. They were still.
Congratulations.
Thank you. They had just migrated over into Cardano. And I was always looking forward to running their nodes and contributing. I read up, their white papers and everything, super excited. And then the time came to be that their node operation started going online. And I realized that as easy as they made it, there were still some technical barriers. Things like, actually running the node systems, read-write speeds, internet speeds. It's not just as simple as plugging into your laptop from your home modem. It can be, but there's performance scores that the nodes get that determine your rewards. And if you're not operating in the top, then your resources are essentially going to more cost, with the reward being reduced. And that's when I started asking around in my network if there was someone that had the experience with data centers and internet in general and all these cloud storage that can help me manage the nodes properly so that I can maximize my rewards. That's where I was not introduced because we were in the same group for quite some time, the same Telegram group. But that's when me and Syed connected, right? We always had conversations in passing about other topics. And he started to kind of walk me through the process. That's when the light bulb went off, and it was like, well, if I have this problem, I'm sure there's thousands of other people that have this problem. They're missing out on significant capital. So I was like, why don't I just try to solve for a larger community that, like the quote says, build the stage and they will come, right? I was essentially building a stage for people like myself who had not the greatest technical background to be able to still tap into these models and run with it. And initially, we were going to start with just Iagon and be cloud storage and computing node operators on a mass scale, right? Where we work with several different data centers scattered across the world with different carriers. So we're not even centralized to just one country or one carrier. It's much cheaper to rent a server to start than to build your own data center, right? So doing that, we essentially started with just Iagon, but then as we started to broaden our horizons, we said, well, we can go into telecoms, decentralized gaming, oracles, AI, right? All these need servers and nodes to run and operate properly. So instead of limiting ourselves to just cloud and computing, we were like, the world of DePIN is so much bigger. Everything is starting to become decentralized physical infrastructure. Why limit ourselves to just one sector, right? And I say this with all the respects to Iagon, Navjit and the team are incredible, right? But we can tap into multiple industries, right? We're chain agnostic, we're industry agnostic. So that's when Nuvola started to pick up steam essentially and say, hey, we're not confined by anyone or anything or any idea or industry. And I think people naturally gravitated to that, seeing wow, these guys can essentially do it all effortlessly, right, at low cost. And we even been have been coined as a DePIN index, right, where essentially we're batching all these different projects and industries and revenue sharing back with our NVL token holders. Now we had our seed raise, right, or our public sale, which we only raised 54% of the ask. Most projects would have packed it up and went home, but being that our model is to essentially start operations and then duplicate as revenues come in, we didn't need the full raise. And giving back to the initial investors, the other unsold 44%, I believe it was, of tokens went right back to the initial investors' pockets. So they ended up getting almost double from the seed raise. And then after that, it's unheard of to hear projects give back so much. So we started to catch momentum, more publicity came in, and then we announced more partnerships and operations. And we've been able to do a lot with the 1.25 million USD we raised. We put it in the right places. It increased our own valuation. We have a robust treasury right now. I believe we've touched well over a 10x from our initial market price when we came on. Our treasury has grown substantially. We're holding on very tight to those funds because those will be utilized in the future. But essentially, as the revenues start pouring in from Igon, Minutes, Kopi, and OrcFax, and all these other partnerships that we acquire, our NDL token holders get paid, our treasury gets funded, and we can start to put into place what I've published as the 1-to-X model, where a single holder doesn't have to go back and keep buying more NVL to essentially increase their ROI potential. Our partnerships do that for us. Our treasury does that for us. So you can buy, for example, 1,000 NVL tokens and get exposure to one partnership worth of revenues, then 2, then 4, then 10, then 20, all with the same amount of NVL that you hold. You never have to increase your exposure to increase your ROI or revenue back in. And we are starting to prove that in real time. Easier said than done. The road will be slow, but the compounding effect starts to kick in, and we can really allow the model to kind of, take form and grow legs. And then a year from now, it's going to be beautiful to see what we're being able to accomplish in such a short amount of time.
100%. And that's actually how I originally discovered you guys when you did the IDO through Coinecta. And one thing I was thinking about is because you get NVO token, you buy it, you stake it, and then you get a share of the rewards that you guys earn from being operators through the different networks that you are working with. Like, why even do that? You know what I mean? Like, why even share the revenue or create a token in the first place? Because that's just money you're sharing with the people who hold this token, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, we could have done what we're doing now on a much smaller scale, right? But the impact would have been so much smaller. It would have taken us so much longer to do it. That's why going to essentially a crowdfund mechanism sped up the process, right, by 100-fold, essentially. It gave us a reputable name to now also present our catalyst funding for our collateralization hub and so many other things that when you're a reputable company with a name and a community behind you, you can get so much more accomplished versus just us being two guys running nodes at random, right? Because at the end of the day, I couldn't run my own nodes. I don't know if you have the capability of running your own nodes. So why not bring more value back to the people, right? And even in our white paper, there's a quote that says, there's no force stronger than people united, right? We united a bunch of people, we raised a bunch of capital, and now we're able to amplify our growth and success that way. Do we have to share the revenue back in? Absolutely not. But at that point, Nuvola wouldn't exist. It would just, again, be me and Syed running some nodes, pocketing everything, right? I think what we've created is special. Our collateralization hub idea came of it, and I think that's going to be a behemoth of its own in the real world. And again, we have a treasury that we're taking care of. That's our firepower. Why not keep redeploying? Because just like the community wins, so do Syed and I. It puts Nuvola on a pedestal within crypto to innovate, and everything we've done is legal. It's by the book. We're a business entity in Dubai. There's a lot of legal things that come into what we've, set out to put. And if we back away from that, I mean, I think we'd be just self-destructing our own personal lives as well. I grew up in a couple different projects where it was a rug or they didn't deliver, and I wish that I had myself and a founder that I could trust in, right? So I took my own failures and kind of like the obstacles that I've overcome in crypto and said, I want to be the guy that I wish I found years ago or when I was down and out in crypto, just starting off, and I think what we're building is special, and I'm excited for the revenues to start kicking in so people can actually understand like, wow, this is real, it's happening. And I think at that point, the momentum is going to be astronomical.
I agree. And you kind of just tapped into something else amazing that you're doing, solving another problem, the collateralization hub. And, to my knowledge, that came about because, one of your partners, Iagon, you're running nodes for them. And, to get access to those rewards, you have to wait a year. And innovatively, you're thinking like, hey, our reward people who are token holders shouldn't have to wait a year to get access to their rewards. Let's create a secondary market for these accruing rewards through collateralization so that those could be traded amongst each other and
Yep.
people can actually have access to that value while they wait, almost like a bond system and how the US government runs it. So how did you even think about that? And where do you see the future of that going? Because that also, like DePIN, applies to a lot of different styles of business and business models as well.
Yeah. So at first, it was just kind of like we set up the operations and we start working. And then I think Iagon at the time had just released the reward schedule for node operators, and it was a 12-month lock. And immediately it was like, well, this kind of shoots us, or not shoots us, but it puts us in a tough place because holders, who's really going to wait 12 months? Like in crypto, that's like 5 years, right? So we had to kind of say, okay, well, this is locked liquidity. How can we tap into it early? And I started thinking, do we do loans through treasury? And then, the idea slowly developed, and it was like, well, if we create a collateralization hub where someone, say, has made 6 months worth of rewards and they were valued at 20,000 ADA, but something in life happened, they need the immediate liquidity, right? They need 10,000 of it. Let's create a system where someone can collateralize the rewards that they are going to get unlocked in 12 months or another 6 months from that point. They get the ADA they need. There's another holder out there that lent them the ADA, and their collateral is the reward. So if they don't receive their payment, they're going to be able to get the IAG when it is unlocked. At first, it started off as just IAG, right? Well, they have a 12-month lock, so this will make perfect sense. We got in touch with Ada Anvil, which they already were doing our staking platform, and we said, hey, can we also start to work this? And then on a call, we were throwing some things around, and I was like, what if we can apply this to real world application, and where there's anywhere else there's locked liquidity or locked value? And at the time, I had just booked my flight to Italy, and I was like laughing, like, thank God I got my insurance. At least I'll get like my credits or whatever. And then the light bulb kind of went off for us, and I was like, well, we can create this same exact system where airline miles, cancel flight credits can be collateralized and resold on the open market. Let's say you have a flight that you just canceled and they're not going to give you your $1,000 back, but they give you flight credit for $1,000. And you turn around and you come on our platform and you say, hey guys, I'm going to sell this for $900. It's at a discount because the current value is actually $1,100 because it's much closer to the the flight date, right? I come along and I say, wow, this current flight on the open market would cost me $1,100. Julian is selling it for $900. I will definitely buy it for $900. And I could even choose to take the flight, or I can go and turn around and sell it for $1,000, which is still undervalued to the current market price, if you're following me here. So what we're doing is taking a locked system and creating layers of liquidity where the airlines necessarily aren't losing the initial purchase price. So they still have your initial 1,000. They're going to make a transaction fee on your secondary sale, right? And when I go to sell it, they'll make a transaction on that. So the same initial flight is unlocking 2, 3, 4, 5 other transactions that someone can interact with. The airline makes money, we make money, the end users have a ton of liquidity. They're not locked into any kind of credits, right? And then this can be applied to travel, cruises, gambling, right? Anywhere that has essentially a locked credit or a locked reward system, we can monetize it and present it to these businesses where they've already made the money, the credit is locked, but now they're making additional money on the resale of those credits or rewards or miles or whatever the case may be. We're super excited about that because this can turn into be a behemoth of its own product and company because it's international. You can apply it to every industry out there that has any credit or locked reward system, right? And the best part of it all is we build it. We're already building it with Anvil, and it just gets sold to the clients. And their customers are now getting unlocked liquidity. They're making more money on money they already had. So it's really a beautiful thing to kind of watch in development here.
And it's genius because there's a slight upfront cost of installation, but it's not like you're going to have to run this system for other companies in the future, but it's going to consistently make you money in the future and make you rewards in the future. And I mean, that's the dream right there. So
just to give you some numbers, some rough numbers I saw floating online, there's about 16 million flights per year that are taken. Usually the cancel rate is about 1.3 to 1.6%, right? So if you round that down, let's say anywhere from 200 to 250,000 flights are canceled per year. Average flight cost internationally, global average is about $370. Rough estimates, you're looking at about anywhere from $60 to $90 million worth of flight credits alone. This doesn't include flight miles or frequent flyer miles. This is just canceled flights of trapped liquidity, customers trapped, and up to 90 million that can be unlocked, transacted in one resale, 2, 3, 4, 5 resales, where the airlines and us and the customer, a 5 to 10% fee, I would pay that any day. If I could get most of my liquidity back from a canceled flight, my flight to Italy was about $3,500 for myself and my girlfriend, right? If I was to cancel that, I would only be able to use that with an airline. You mean to tell me that for a 10% fee, I can get most of that money back and sell it to someone else? I will absolutely pay that. That's a no-brainer, right?
Yeah.
So there's huge money at stake here that's just trapped. And like I said, that's only canceled flights. We're not talking flight miles, cruises, Airbnb travels, whatever the case may be. Like we can easily creep up into the hundreds of millions, even billions of dollars across multiple industries that's just locked. And if we can unlock that, which we will, and create even more transaction volume for these businesses, you're talking mass adoption of a crypto technology within the next 12 months. It can be as disruptive as Netflix was to Blockbuster. Netflix wasn't just disruptive to Blockbuster. It was disruptive to the entire film industry in general because it went from physical hard sales to streaming sales, where now anyone in the world can log in somewhere and watch any movie of sorts. And the monetization game changed. So much more transaction volume increased from that, right? Because it went from physically running to a store to now me just picking up a remote and saying, I want to watch this movie, click. and it's instant. It's right there. We can do this with any sort of locked credit system. Even if Netflix gives you credits, oh, you can unlock this and watch these movies, but only you can do that. We can step in and say, hey, Netflix, allow us to allow you to help your customers resell their credits. You're not losing the initial money. You're actually making more money on more transactions. We've already built it for you. Here you go. We can tap into anywhere, which lives up to the Nuvola chain agnostic, industry agnostic. We're not even product agnostic, where we're not trapped anywhere. None of this could be done without Anvil, our partner, right? We're doing this in junction with them. They're the technical arm. We're the marketing ideology arm, where we're presenting these things, right? And they're building it. So it's a very cohesive and synergistic relationship we have there. And we're working on a third partner, which I can't say as of yet, but it is massive.
Never can.
I can't release that yet, but it is massive to get this going with their network and, you know, their power and their firepower there. But we're in a really good place, man.
That's awesome. And I mean, just for all the entrepreneurs who ever hear this, two things I hear that you're shining at is having a vision for the future, recognizing opportunities coming down the road and seeing the big picture, number one, and then also developing great partnerships.
Yep.
And so, like, was that just, you know, kind of going into the entrepreneurship side of your, you know, your life? Was that just always, were you always great at that? You know, how did you get started in building your, I guess, creative mind as an entrepreneur and being able to leverage, I guess, people skills to help turn all these ideas into realities the way that you have is very impressive.
Oh, thank you. I feel like it comes down to a few factors. First and foremost is transparency, right? You know, whenever you interact in the real world with businesses, the first thing someone thinks to themselves, even before they hear the idea fully or the pitch, they look at who's pitching it. Is this person trustworthy? Can I trust them? What background do they have? You know, and do they look like somebody that I'd want to financially tie myself with, right? And
Absolutely.
that's even before the product or the idea is even fully pitched or presented, right? I think we've done a great job at Nuvola of being extremely transparent, trustworthy. Everything we do is out there. My entire professional history before crypto, my resume, you know, where I live, you know, who I am, where I'm from is all out there. It's transparent. You know, I'm not hiding anything from anyone. I think that went a long way because in crypto, everything is anonymous. Everything is hiding behind an NFT picture on Twitter. And, you know, founders aren't normally doxxed. Everything is like a trust me, bro kind of environment where we already broke down that boundary immediately. And then the second portion of that is when it comes to partnerships, one, your idea has to be valuable. What you're presenting has to have a numerical or dollar sign tied to it that shows the potential of someone investing their time and their credibility into it, right? The second portion of the idea has to be tying someone's value back into it. Hey, you're really good at this. I need you for this. You can help me achieve this. And then it becomes less of a, oh, I hope he buys the idea. And it turns it into a, wow, there's a lot of cohesiveness here where my own value can be brought to the table and I can help this thing grow. And that's what Anvil saw right away when we presented essentially the first portion of the collateralization hub and then the real world utility of it. They were like, this is incredible. They added their own elements to it. And, you know, Cash at Ada Anvil, he brought the gambling aspect of it too, where I'm not too big in gambling, but, you know, there's a huge element there as well. So once you can tie someone's value into an already valuable potential of an idea, it makes it less friction of trying to persuade and more of a conversation of, wow, I'm good at this, you're good at that. It can help this idea really mature into this. And here's the potential and the industry and the numbers backing all of it. It comes down to essentially how it's presented and by who it's presented. At the core, it's always value. What is the value proposition that is being put onto the table with this idea, and what value does each party coming forth together bring to it to help it become physically valuable in the real world. And I think when we presented that to Iagon, Minutes, Workfax, all our partners, Anvil, and now the collateralization hub essentially becoming, our own little baby of a product, right? That is not dependent on other partnerships. It just brings the value to the table where it's so much easier to present, and everyone wants to get involved at this point, including this potential third partner that we will reveal soon once things get more formalized.
Well, I love when you review new partners, and as a NVL holder, it always makes my heart sing. So I'm excited. And before we move forward, first shout out to Cash and the Ada Envo team. I don't know Cash personally, but we run in similar circles. So every time I've been in the Twitter space with him, he's always just dropping gems along with a joke, and just seems like a very interesting guy. And the work they're doing, he's Ada Envo's helped so many different projects in our ecosystem, the Cardano ecosystem, that they're becoming a mainstay in Cardano right now. So first, I wanted to give flowers where flowers are due, and kind of building on the idea of right partnerships. As Nuvola looks for different, not all DePIN networks are going to make it, just like not all businesses in any industry are going to make it. And even if one is going to make it and you believe it, that doesn't necessarily mean that is the right partner for Nuvola right now. So who are some of your partners that you're just most excited about? What do you look for when you're looking for a DePIN network to work with, and and just attach your name to?
Yeah, so I will say, if we're partnered with them officially and it's branded, it's labeled, we are very excited about them in general. Iagon was the very first big partnership. They did us a huge favor because when we approached them, we were absolute nobodies, right? We had to really fight to earn their trust. But again, being transparent and the value we brought to the table with this model and idea, they bought into it. And, it's looked good having us as a partner because I think we're proving ourselves every single day, every single week. But cloud storage and computing, massive industry. That's why we wanted to be with Iagon, because they're providing solutions to really innovate in that space. Minutes Network, what they're doing is a sheer volume game in the telecom industry. Calls can be monetized. Minutes can be monetized. This is huge. Excuse me. This is huge because I never once thought that I could make money from other people's cell phones and other people's calls. But here we are today with Nuvola, being able to tap into essentially what's, as I've seen in recent research, $1 trillion+ industry of telecoms. 13.5 billion calls, I think, are made per day. That's insane. If you really do the math on how many calls are made on an annual basis, it's the numbers look like big, like two cell phone numbers put next to each other, right? So that industry has untapped, like unlimited potential when it comes to what they're doing. Decentralized gaming with Kopi. This industry is huge. Gaming is a massive industry. Right now, we're getting to the point where you can monetize games and you can be involved from an operator standpoint. It's again, uncapped. There's no ceilings of the potential that these companies bring. Workfax with oracles, right? Price feeds. Trading is another huge sector in the world where everyone's trying to get into trading now, right? The markets, everybody's just constantly looking for an advantage of an indicator or the price, or how can I get ahead, right? Workfax allows for these price feeds and other critical information on exchanges, indexes, that it happens in real time, and we need those solutions. We're also assisting and helping there, right? So all our partnerships we're super proud of, we're super happy to be involved with. And essentially, even with our own collateralization hub and our Nuvola Drive app, we're superseding just being dependent on partners and what they're creating. We're creating our own value and bringing that to the table as well. So when we look for partners, there's three elements that I've always said. It ties back to something else I stated before with value and transparency. Who's the team? What's their experience? Can they be trusted? What other elements or companies or entities have they been involved in the past? Second is, what industry are they in? What's the road ahead look like for that industry, for their project, for their solution, right? What are they bringing to the table? How innovative is it? Robust, forecast. What are we looking at? Lastly is the revenue share model. We're a business, they're business. I'm sure you have a business. Everyone's in business to make money. We have to make sure that when we get involved, because we are investing into these entities, it's profitable for us to do so, right? It has to be lucrative enough where we can pay out our holders, and Nuvola not only can just stay afloat, but move forward and keep growing from those operations. If we're doing things to break even at this point, it's not really in our favor, right? Like, why would we? We are here to grow. So the models that they present has to be robust enough. So those are the three elements we look for when it comes to partnerships.
Okay, awesome. And so, we're getting close to an hour, and I don't want to, hold you for too long. But, one thing you're able to do that a lot of, in my opinion, Cardano, projects outside of yourself haven't been able to is really expand cross-chain, because your partnerships are not contained to only working with Cardano people. Like, I believe Minutes is launched on Ethereum.
Yep.
And so that gives you, the opportunity to see so much that's going on outside of a smaller echo chamber or bubble. And so just doing that for you personally, not speaking for Nuvola, but Raul, what's your opinion on like just the overall state of crypto? What's really catching your attention from all the different angles that you're able to see this with, and where do you think we're going just as an industry overall?
That's another great question. Honestly, I think the current state of crypto is too combative. Everyone's trying to be the one chain does it all, which I don't think is ever going to be the case, right? I look at the crypto realm and the blockchains almost like states within. I'm in the US, so let's just reference it back to that, right? There's 50, all these states, and each state is good at doing something that they're good at, right? So when I want to enjoy my summers and have nice weather in the beach, I'm usually going to be in Florida, right? If I want to enjoy the greenery and the mountains and all these other places, I might go to a state that has these mountains and these things, right? But each state represents a blockchain. Each blockchain is good at what they do, right? Cardano, one of the most secure blockchains ever. Is it slow? Are we facing our own battles? Absolutely, right? Ethereum is the largest. It was the first to market with DeFi and a lot of these other elements. They're doing, they led the front. So their adoption was much bigger and faster than a blockchain like Cardano right now. But AVAX is known for gaming, right? If I want to do gaming, I might go to AVAX. So I think what's currently happening is everyone's trying to big up their chest and say, I'm going to be the best, biggest blockchain, the only one in existence, which I think is so toxic, first of all. And I know there's quite a few people in Cardano that talk like that and think like that. And I think it's not about being the only or the best. It's about how can I interact with other chains that are better at doing what I do, right? Like I said, gaming on AVAX is really booming. If I want to interact with a game, or get Nuvola involved with a game outside of Copy, which is on Base, by the way. So our partnership with them is via Base, which is outside of Cardano. We will go to AVAX and partner with someone there. I don't think it comes down to being the best or the fastest or the strongest. I think it comes down to doing what we're really good at and expanding at it, right? And that's why I always wanted Nuvola to be agnostic. I'm not trying to be tied down to Cardano only. I love Cardano. I've been on Cardano since 2018, right? I to see what they built is phenomenal. But to say I'm only going to work with people within Cardano is very limiting and toxic, and it's small-minded. Minutes is on Ethereum. They're actually one of our biggest partners next to Igon at the moment. They might be bigger in retrospect as to how they're moving in the industry they're tapping into, right? So why would I not interact with them and want to partner with them simply because they chose to be on Ethereum, right? Ethereum at the current moment has a ton more liquidity than Cardano does. Nuvola being on Cardano, tapping into Ethereum with minutes, is now tapping into a bigger liquidity pool where we can essentially bring back in and extract liquidity that can help Cardano and other projects we're involved in here in many other ways, right? So when it comes to chains, I don't think there's going to be one dominant. I think there's going to be robust bridges that eventually will be safe enough to utilize to transact currencies within each blockchain itself. That's my stance on it. Again, I'm a Cardano guy at heart. I love it, but I don't think it's just a one chain to rule them all kind of situation.
I absolutely agree. And I think that, what is really going into why this is happening and why this ideology is happening is because people don't really realize how early we are to the adoption of, crypto technology and blockchain. And so right now, a lot of, from, online Twitter, retail investors, all they're seeing is a war for liquidity right now.
Mm-hmm.
They're saying people because how do people get into crypto usually? They buy some Bitcoin, Bitcoin goes up after the halving generally. And then you're like, oh, I made some money. Oh, there's other cryptos and I could have made more money if I was in there. So let me discover. And then you start doing research, you own 20. And then you're like, all right, this is too much to pay attention to. Then you start, dwindling down to your communities or where you hang out. And you kind of get into this, like you said, hub of this is the only blockchain that can rule them all. Why? Because your whole bag is in there.
Yeah.
And so you of course you want, this one chain to rule them all, because that means, all the liquidity will come into your chain. And then, you go to the moon and you make a killing. And, I think a lot of people are seeing other chains as liquidity threats to their chain because they don't have an abundance mentality that we live in a world of trillions, if not quadrillions of dollars of value, being able to come into crypto eventually and feed, multi-chain, this multi-chain universe that's developing. So I don't know, outside of time, I don't know the solution to that personally. I think about that often. What do you think kind of pushes us past it?
Past the combating of chains or the adoption of our own. I think honestly, it comes down to a competitive aspect, right? Humans in nature, most of us, we are competitive. We get involved with something. There's emotional ties to the finances we've put in, right? So we want to be the best to the point that it's almost self-sacrificial, because you're limiting yourself to other possibilities if you're only putting yourself in one place, right? I think Nuvola, our model, is a solution, right? That's why we presented it to such to say we can work with anyone. I don't care who wins. I want us all to win. It doesn't have to be one winner, right? I want everyone to win because I win. And if you position yourself in a way where you're helping others win, regardless of what chain they are on, and whatever solutions you provide is beneficial, back to the whole thing about value proposition, right? We present value to someone on Ethereum, someone on Base, someone on Cardano, on AVAX, wherever the case may be. Even in the real world with our collateralization hub and Nuvola Drive, those are real world applications. They're not even considered to be living on one blockchain, so we're not competing with other blockchains on it. When you can present value, regardless of what chain it lands on, I think that's essentially what's going to stop this and make it more of this, right? And until we put our arms down and start saying, hey, we're all in it for crypto instead of I'm in it for Cardano or I'm in it for Ethereum, until that conversation starts to morph into more of that, more embracive versus, combative, I don't see us surpassing that. But also it comes down to one more element, which is the ease of entry that I mentioned earlier on call. How easy is it for someone to break into the barrier of crypto, right? I want to get to a point where Nuvola Drive and our collateralization hub is utilizing crypto technology on the back end, but works seamlessly like a Web2 app such as Instagram or Facebook or eBay or Amazon, where someone's naturally browsing through, doing their thing, running their business, making their money, and they don't even realize that crypto tech is being utilized. That is another barrier that I think no one has solved yet. And that's why it's so combative between chains, because everyone's trying to be that first one to fully break that barrier and give an end user that experience of Web 2, ease of entry and usability with Web 3 tech in the background. No one's fully really developed that yet. So if we're one of the first ones to do it with our collateralization hub, obviously it'll put Cardano massively on the map. But again, I refuse to shit on other chains because I have partnerships in different chains, right? I used to
Absolutely.
be Cardano maxi when I first came to Cardano, and then I realized how toxic that is when I'm running my own business because I'm interacting with someone on Ethereum and they're making me money. I'm making them money. Why would I insult them for their decisions, right? Do I agree? Maybe I don't in certain areas, but there's elements of why they chose to do it the way they did. So again, just to summarize, I think it has to be a more inclusive conversation versus the combative beating your chest of I'm the best, I'm going to be the first, because I think while someone succeeds at being the first at something, we can succeed at being the first at something else. And down the road, our businesses may come together and say, wow, we can actually utilize each other's value, which I keep coming back to, and create more value from it.
Yeah, and building on top of what you're saying, I think this is actually, bigger than even just a crypto issue. I think that humans, in areas that we're passionate about, we tend to buckle down into our ideologies or our camps, and then anyone who is outside of that, we other. And then when you other someone, then you have this clashing that's going on instead of the unification. And I think as humans, as we learn to look at one another and say, hey, I believe this because of these reasons, but I can respect that someone else can think something differently than me and still be an intelligent person, a moral person, and and someone who is actually still engaged even though they believe something differently than me. Then that leaves room for dialogue, and then we can start coming together more and seeing how a lot of people have more in common, whether it's crypto or anything, than the similarities. So hopefully, even as we figure this out within crypto, we can maybe be models for the rest of the world in every other aspect of how do people come together and learn how to get along, even when you have differences. Um,
Yeah. And you make a good point. I think the only way to really solve that is by being the first to put your arms down and saying, "Hey, man, like let's work together." I think when you take pride out of the way, which I always try to bring forth with Nuvola, we're not prideful in any way, shape, or form, right? I think when you just offer your services to help others is when it's going to start to evolve into a more cohesive, relationship instead of so combative and trying to be first and competitive, right? So now you made some great points there for sure. I like the whole thing. We make everyone the others, right? I think it needs to be more like, what are you building? How can that help me? What am I building? How can that help you?
Absolutely. And I think right there, because bro, I have to have you back because I didn't even get to get in. DePIN is so technical and new, and you guys are doing so much at Nuvola that I didn't even get to kind of dive into your own personal story, your football career, your journey as an entrepreneur, your journey in tech. So hopefully I get to have you come back one of these days. But in the meantime, if people want to get in touch with you, if people want to get in touch with Nuvola, how do we reach out to you? How do we get in contact with you to make something go?
Yeah, sure. If you can link our Twitter, it's just at Nuvola Digital, and then our Discord as well. I'm in there every day. I'm always on Twitter in Spaces. We handle everything mostly through there, support tickets. But again, we have so much in development. We could sit here for days and talk about it. I'll definitely be back on sometime in the near future to have a more in-depth, deep-in conversation, and even if, like you said, talk a little more personal about my life as well. I'm always open to share my personal stories.
Awesome. So yeah, we'll wrap this up for today. But Raul, you're a very busy man. Thank you for taking the time to hop on, and I look forward to more conversations in the future.
Absolutely, Julian. Thank you so much for having me.
No problem. And everyone who's watching, have a great rest of your day. Sending love and blessings to you as well. And this is Julian from Cloud Finder, and we're out.